is actually inadequate for countering environmental challenges on the timescale that we need to. Right, and so I'm gonna walk through 5 different reasons. And these reasons are all gonna be of the following form. So these are all gonna be reasons that Web3 makes auditing and like environmental accounting automatic, or at least allows you to make pieces of it automatic. And we're gonna see what those 5 different reasons add up to at the end, right? So here goes. So firstly, at the sort of lowest level, most sort of crypto level, content addressing protects data at rest. It uses encryption to protect data at rest, so you can see whether someone tampered with it, not just when data is being transmitted like in Web 2. So what that means is, if you have some environmental accounting exercise, you're relying on someone else's equation, and you find that it didn't, you know, your answer at the end didn't work out to what you thought it was going to work out to, you're able to go and validate all of the information that went into that exercise, right? So it takes some of the burden off of manual auditing by protecting data at rest, because it's addressed by a content address, it's not addressed by a location address, so someone can't like sneak onto the server and change your calculations without you knowing, right? So that's one reason. The second reason is that by making data self-sovereign, any changes can be traced to a responsible party. So again, in a traditional sort of Web 2 accounting system, a bunch of people might have access to the same data, right? The contractor might have access, different departments in the company trying to measure their emissions might have access to it, you know, auditors might have access to it, and you can't always, if someone makes a change, you can't necessarily figure out who made that change and ask them about it, right? So by everyone having their own keys, you can trace changes back to individual self-sovereign entities, and that helps you with this like automatic auditing, because everyone is signing the statements that they make. Then for many Web3 systems, data is publicly verifiable by design. An example of this is what I talked about earlier with taking proofs from the Filecoin chain as to the resources contributed to the network by each of these individual nodes, and using those to underpin energy estimates, right? And a lot of different Web3 systems, right, are taking these, taking this closed company model that relies on secrecy and turning it inside out, right? And taking a lot of the data that we use to run projects and just making that publicly available. So then you get all of the benefits of open source into your auditing exercise, right? And so fourth, this is sort of going up in like levels of abstraction. Even if a company, so Web3 is going to eat the world. A lot of different companies that are not in Web3 right now are going to start doing environmental accounting using Web3 tools. Maybe they don't want to reveal all of their information. Maybe some legacy company doesn't want to take all of its operations and make that all publicly available. We actually have tools to deal with that. What I'm imagining here is a zero-knowledge proof system, like this sort of diagram. It's kind of simple, or it's kind of bizarre and abstract. I guess it's kind of complex. All these inputs come in, right? They may be fuel, they may be emissions from suppliers, and you have these outputs, right? And your emissions exercise wants to show that all those numbers add up, but you don't actually want to show everyone what all those numbers are, because maybe that's part of your business model. That's fine. We can take a model of your operation. We can audit that model very occasionally, and then we can flow information through that model so that you can prove to anyone who you give a little bit of information that that's accurate, that it agrees with the information you're telling everyone else, right? And so zero-knowledge proof structures are what allow us to do that. This is not mature in this industry yet, but we need to build this because this is really key for allowing this sort of granular, verifiable information to flow through the economy in real time. And then fifth, I'm going to make the claim that Fiat is actually computationally incomplete for modeling environmental externalities, right? So typically, an economist, if you tell them there's a problem, the way they say a market will solve it is you put a price on carbon, right? And then the market uses that price signal to figure out as efficiently as possible where it can reduce carbon, right? The problem is that many environmental externalities don't add it in the same way that fiat money adds. So one example of this is you take a plot of land A, you take a plot of land B, fiat money knows the value of A, the value of B, and the value of the two of them is A plus B, right? But their value to the environment is different whether they are contiguous versus whether they are separate, right? You take the same area of land and you divide it into a bunch of different parcels, and it is less valuable to the ecosystem, right? And so fiat money doesn't know how to model that. Fiat money only knows how to add and subtract. But crypto systems, you can build arbitrarily complex models, right? And you can use them to verify how information is flowing through the economy. And so the solution to this, right, again, is manual auditing, right? If you say, okay, I'm gonna try to price in this like complicated nonlinear externality in my system, like then the auditor, that just creates a lot of work for whoever is doing this, right? And that means you can't audit in real time. You have to, there's this like huge time lag. And how much is that time lag, you might ask? Well, so the SEC has this proposed rulemaking. They're going to require companies, right, to release data on their emissions, right? That's great. But if you look at their rulemaking, they're only requiring it annually, which is the existing standard. What that means, though, if you think through that, if the IPCC has told us anything in the past 4 years, there's two things. It's that we're running out of time, and we need to reduce emissions 43% by 2030. So we have 8 years, right? And so like imagine trying to harness the creativity of everyone in the entire economy to understand where their emissions are coming from and act to reduce and mitigate those emissions. Imagine we're trying to do that in a distributed way throughout the economy. And imagine we're doing it based on this system, right? I'm a company, I publish every year. My customers use that data in their reporting, right? So by the time I've done the auditing process and published that data, it's gonna be months old by the time it gets done. If they use that as an input for their reporting and publish that to their customers, and they do that next year, then by the time my information flows through their report, their customers are gonna have more than a year lag, right? And every step throughout the supply chain adds a year. So we need this information to flow through the economy at the speed at which decisions are being made. We need to move environmental data through the economy in a matter of minutes, not months.